Good day everyone. So today we are going to discuss about our first lesson in basic calculus, which is the limit of a function. The idea of limits is fundamental to the study of calculus. In everyday usage, we talk about limiting our calories intake, speed limits in the highway, or stretching our capacity to the limit. In each this situation, the use of the word limit suggests a boundary that may be reached or not or possibly exceeded. A mathematical limit has characteristics similar to those of a physical limit. It is the analysis of how function values or outputs change when inputs change. In everyday life, imagine that you are going to watch a basketball game. When you choose seats, you would want to be as close to the action as possible. You would want to be as close to the players as possible and have the best view of the game as if you were in the basketball court yourself. Take note that you cannot actually be in the court and join the players, but you will be close enough to describe clearly what is happening in the game. Meaning, pwede mong lapitan as much as possible yung mga players, pero hindi mo pwedeng palitan yung players. Ganon din sa limits. Meron lamang yung hangganan nung kung saan mo pwedeng i-approach or pwedeng puntahan yung mga bagay-bagay. And that is the idea of limit. This is how it is with limits of function. We will consider function of a single variable and study the behavior of the function as its variable approaches a particular value. For rational function, asymptotes can be found by using tables of values to decide what happens to f of x as x gets closer to a number, say c. If the values of the function f of x get closer and closer to a number L as the values of x approach c, we say that L is the limit of the function f of x as x approaches c. This is written as the function f of x approaches L as x approaches c, or more commonly as the limit of the function f of x as x approaches c equals L. And we can also read this as the limit of the function f of x as x approaches c is equal to L. To have a better understanding about the limit of a function, let's have our first example. Let's say let's find the limit of the function x plus 8 as x approaches c, as x approaches 3. Here, our function is x plus 8, and the constant c which x will approach is 3. To evaluate the given limit, we will make use of a table to help us keep track of the effect that the approach of x toward 3 will have on f of x. Of course, the number line x may approach 3 in two ways, through values on its left and through values on its right. So as you can see, the values of x approaches 3 from the left and the values of x approaches 3 from the right. We first consider approaching 3 from its left or through the values less than 3. So what are those? 2, 2.4, 2.7, 2.9, 2.95, 2.99, 2.999, and 2.999. As you can see, kung mapapansin ninyo, yung values dito papalapit na papalapit sa values ni 3. So meaning, ina-approach nung x ang values ni 3 from the left. So our function is x plus 8. Now, we are going to substitute the value of x, which is 2, to the values of x. So that is f of 2 is equal to 2 plus 8. And that is f of 2 is equal to 10. Therefore, when the value of x is 2, our f of x is 10. Next, we substitute the second given value of x, which is 2.4. So again, our function here is x plus 8. Now, we substitute the value of 2.4 to the value of x. So that is f of 2.4 is equal to 2.4 plus 8, which is equal to 10.4. Now, therefore, if the value of x is 2.4, the f of x is 10.4. So, we continue this until such time mabuo natin yung table. So, if the value of x is 2.7, the f of x is 10.7. If the value of x is 2.9, the value of f of x is 10.9. If the value of x is 2.95, then the value of f of x is 10.95. If the value of x is 2.99, then the value of f of x is 10.99. If the value of x is 2.999, then the value of f of x is 10.999. If the value of x is 2.99999, then the value of f of x is 10.9999. So, ito yung mga values na nag-a-approach sa value ni 3 from the left. Now, we consider the value of x as x approaches 3 from the right. So, we have 4, 3.6, 3.3, 3.1, 3.03, 3.01, 3.001, and 3.0001. Now, our function is still x plus 8. We substitute the first value from the right, that is 4. So therefore, f of 4 is equal to 4 plus 8. And then 4 plus 8 is 12. Therefore, f of 4 is equal to 12. Meaning, if the value of x is 4, then f of x is equal to 12. We have the second value, which is 3.6. So again, our function is x plus 8. So we substitute the value of x, which is 3.6. Therefore, f of 3.6 is equal to 3.6 plus 8, and that is 11.6. Now, if the value of x is 3.6, therefore the value of f of x is 11.6. So we continue this substituting the value of x 3.3, 3.1, 3.03 to the function. Then we can get, if the value of x is 3.3, we get 11.3. If the value of x is 3.1, we get 11.1. If the value of x is 3.03, therefore f of x is 11.03. If the value of x is 3.01, then the value of f of x is 11.01. If the value of x is 3.001, then the value of f of x is 11.001. If the value of x is 3.0001, then the value of f of x is 11.0001. Now, that is the table as x approaches 3 from the right. So, as you notice, from the two tables, observe that the value of x as x get closer and closer to 3. The value of f of x get closer and closer to uncertain value. So habang lumalapit yung value ni x from the left, meron din isang value na nilalapitan yung f of x. And so with the value on the right, habang lumalapit ang value ni x sa 3 from the right, meron ding value na nilalapitan yung f of x from the right. At kung mapapansin nyo, ang value ni x, habang ang value ni x ay nilalapitan niya sa 3 both left and right, ang nilalapitan na value ay 11. Therefore, we say that the limit of x plus 8 as x approaches 3 is equal to 11. So we proceed to the next example. Our second example is the limit of x squared plus 1 as x approaches 1. So meron na namang dalawang value or two sets of values na ina-approach si negative 1. And that is from the left, which is negative 1.5, negative 1.2, negative 1.01, negative 1.001. So nilalapitan yung value ni negative 1 from the left. And of course, from the right, and that is negative 0.5, negative 0.8, negative 0.99, and negative 0.999. So nilalapitan yung value ni negative 1 from the right. We first consider the values from the left. So our function here is x squared plus 1, and our value of c as x approaches a certain value, which is c, and that is negative 1. So our first value here is negative 1.5. So we substitute the value of negative 1.5 to x. So we have f of negative 1.5 is equal to negative 1.5 squared plus 1. And that is negative 1.5 squared is equal to 2.25. So we have f of negative 1.5 is equal to 2.25 plus 1. 2.25 plus 1 is equal to 3.25. So therefore, if the value of x is negative 1.5, the value of f of x is 3.25. Next, if the value of x is negative 1.2, anong mangyayari sa f of x? Still, our function is x squared plus 1. So we substitute the value of negative 1.2 to the value of x. We have f of negative 1.2 is equal to negative 1.2 squared plus 1. And negative 1.2 squared is equal to 1.44. So we have f of negative 1.2 is equal to 1.44 plus 1. So we have f of negative 1.2 is equal to 2.44. So if the value of x is negative 1.2, our f of x is 2.44. So we continue this, substituting the value of x to our function. We get, if the value of x is negative 1.01, then we have 2.0201. If the value of x is negative 1.0001, then we have our function f of x is 2.00020001. So that is the value of f of x and x as x approaches the value of c, or which is negative 1 from the left. Tignan naman natin ngayon yung kung anong mangyayari sa value ni f of x from the right. So we have negative 0.5, negative 0.8, negative 0.99, and negative 0.999. So we have here negative 0.5. So still our function is x squared plus 1. We substitute the value of negative 0.5. F of negative 0.5 is equal to negative 0.5 squared plus 1. And negative 0.5 squared is 0.25. So we have f of negative 0.5 is equal to 0.25 plus 1. So f of negative 0.5 is equal to 1.25. Therefore, if the value of x is negative 0.5, our f of x is 1.25. Next, our second value is negative 0.8. Still, our function is f of x is equal to x squared plus 1. So if we substitute the value of negative 0.8. So f of negative 0.8 is equal to negative 0.8 squared plus 1. So f of negative 0.8 is equal to 0.64 plus 1, and that is equal to 1.64. So if the value of x is negative 0.8, f of x is equal to 1.64. So if we continue this, substituting the value of x to the function, if x is equal to negative 0.99, f of x is 1.9801. If x is negative 0.9999, f of x is 1.999800001. So tignan na natin ngayon yung dalawang tables. So kung mapapansin nyo, meron ulit isang value na ina-approach ni f of x as x approaches c, which is negative 1. So from the left, yung first table natin, habang ina-approach ni x si negative 1 from the left, merong isang value siyang ina-approach. And then habang ina-approach ni x from the right, si negative 1, meron ulit isang value na ina-approach si our function f of x. At kung mapapansin nyo, ito ay 2. Therefore, the limit of the function x squared plus 1 as x approaches negative 1 is equal to 2. Our third example, we have here a complicated function. So find the limit of the function f of x as x approaches 4 if f of x is equal to x plus 1 if x is less than 4. Then we have x minus 4 squared plus 3 if x is greater than or equal to 4. So meron tayong dalawang function here. We have x plus 1 and x minus 1 squared plus 3. So kapag kapag si x ay mas mababa sa 4, ang gagamitin daw natin na function ay x plus 1. So habang ina-approach ni x si 4 from the left, ang gagamitin natin na function ay x plus 1. On the other hand, kapag i-approach ni x si 4 from the right, or if x is greater than or equal to 4, ang gagamitin natin na function ay x minus 4 squared plus 3, which if x is greater than or equal to 4. Now, we consider the values of x as x approaches 4 from the left. So gaya ng sabi ko, kapag si x ay mas mababa sa 4, ang gagamitin natin na function raw ay x plus 1. So our first value here is 3.7. So our function is x plus 1. So if the value of x is 3.7, we have f of 3.7 is equal to 3.7 plus 1. So f of 3.7 is equal to 4.7. So if the value of x is 3.7, the value of f of x is 4.7. Next value is 3.85. Still, our function is x plus 1. So if the value of x is 3.85, we have f of 3.85 is equal to 3.85 plus 1. So that is f of 3.85 is equal to 4.85. Sorry, yung f of 3.7 dyan, 3.85 dapat yan. So, if the value of x is 3.85, the value of f of x is 4.85. Kapag ipagpapatuloy natin yung pag-substitute sa value ni x sa function, if x is equal to 3.995, the value of f of x is 4.995. If the value of x is 3.99999, the value of f of x is 4.99999. Next, we see the value of the function f of x on the right. So, ang gagamitin raw natin na function kapag si x is greater than or equal to 4 ay x minus 4 squared plus 3. So, our function here is x minus 4 squared plus 3. The first value is 4.3. So, we substitute the value of 4.3 sa value ni x. So, we have f of 4.3 is equal to 4.3 minus 4 squared plus 3. 4.3 minus 4 is equal to 0.3. So we have f of 4.3 is equal to 0.3 squared plus 3. 0.3 squared is equal to 0.09. So f of 4.3 is equal to 0.09 plus 3. Therefore, f of 4.3 is equal to 3.09. So if the value of x is 4.3, our f of x is 3.09. So let's have 4.1. So we substitute the value of x, which is 4.1, to the value of x. So f of 4.1 is equal to 4.1 minus 4 squared plus 3. So f of 4.1 is equal to 0.1 squared plus 3. 0.1 squared is 0.01 plus 3. So f of 4.1 is 3.01. So if the value of x is 4.1, our f of x is 3.01. Now, if we continue this, if the value of x is 4.001, the value of f of x is 3.000001. If the value of x is 4.00001, the value of f of x is 3.00000001. So, if we compare the two tables, if the value of x approaches 4 from the left, ang ina-approach ni f of x ay 5. Pero kapag ang value ni x ay ina-approach niya si 4 from the right, ang ina-approach ni x ay 3. Therefore, from this function, magkaiba sila ng ina-approach. So kapag magkaiba sila ng ina-approach, we say that the limit of f of x as x approaches 4 does not exist or DNE. Bakit does not exist? Kasi sa left, ang ina-approach ni f of x as x approaches 4 from the left ay 5. Sa right naman, as x approaches 4 from the right, ang ina-approach ni f of x ay 3. Therefore, si 5 at 3 ay hindi pareho. So, magkaiba sila ng ina-approach na values. So, therefore, the limit of the function f of x as x approaches 4 does not exist. Note that we need to emphasize an important fact here. Remark number 1. We do not say that the limit of f of x as x approaches 4 equals DNE, nor we do write the limit of f of x as x approaches 4 equals DNE, because DNE is not a value. In the previous example, D and E indicated that the function moves in different direction as its variable approaches C from the left and from the right. Kanina, yung value ni f of x habang ina-approach niya from the left and from the right ay magkaiba. Sa left ay 5, sa right ay 3. In other case, the limit fails to exist because it is undefined, such as the limit of 1 over x as x approaches 0, which leads to the division of 1 by 0. We have the second remark. Have you noticed a pattern? In the way we have been investigating a limit, we have been specifying whether x will approach a value c from the left through the values less than c or from the right through the values greater than c. This direction may be specified in the limit notation, and that is the limit of f of x as x approaches c by adding certain symbols. If x approaches c from the left or through values less than c, then we write the limit of f of x as x approaches c from the left. If x approaches c from the right or through the values of greater than c, then we write the values of f of x as x approaches c to the positive. Furthermore, we say that the limit of f of x as x approaches c if equals L if and only if the limit of the function f of x as x approaches c from the left equals L and the limit of the function f of x as x approaches c from the right equals L. Meaning, masasabi lang natin na ang limit ni function f of x as x approaches c equals L kapag yung values ni f of x or yung limit ni f of x from the left equals L and the limit of the function f of x from the right equals L. So masasabi lang natin na 5 ang limit ni f of x kapag 5 sa left at 5 sa right. Masasabi natin na 3 or 2, 3 ang limit ni function f of x kapag 2 ang limit niya sa left at 2 sa right. Pero magiging D and E or does not exist kapag magkaiba sila ng values. For example, magiging does not exist kapag ang values ng limit ni f of x sa left ay 5 at ang limit ni f of x sa right ay 3. So that's all for today. Thank you and God bless.